We are live for PB episode number 15, the college football episode already. It is Thanksgiving week. Mr. Paisley, great to be back here. Another full slate of college football.
Yeah, last week of the season here, a little bittersweet ending, but a lot of games to recap with a crazy week that happened with a lot of upsets and close calls, and then a nice slate of games coming down to some big rivalries in the last week of the season. So should be fun. Looking forward to the episode today.
Yeah, ton of great games to recap from this last week. Crazy endings, and now we get into another week, rivalry week, as they say. So a ton of good ones ahead. This is the betting recap from this previous week. Slightly better last week than most weeks. I was able to go 9-3, which kept us above 50%. I think Jared eight wins, 9 losses, and a push there in the Ohio State, Indiana over under. But overall, just pretty strong. We got the Kansas outright, well, with the points, and then I had also Kansas to win outright. That was a nice hit. Nebraska hanging on, Iowa hanging on. Some of these really could have changed at the last second on my picks. I finally something went my way. It seemed in the end of these games in the fourth quarter. Illinois took a little coming back for them as well. Vanderbilt covered by half a point in their game, and then USC also squeaking it out against UCLA by 6. So I'll take it 9-3 for sure. But yeah, definitely could have went one way or the other in the fourth quarter in some of these games.
Yeah, I think to have a really great week like that, you got to get a couple breaks, but excellent picks by you, Case. We were both on Kansas. You had them as a lock. I think we nailed that one in the preview. Shout out Kansas. And then my lock, Ole Miss. We will get to them in a little bit. I'm very disappointed in Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss, as we are sometimes on this pod.
Yeah.
Then one of my favorite covers, got to shout out the UMass Minutemen getting the cover plus 42 against Georgia, keeping that game a little close, and then Georgia scored a couple late to make it look a little bit better than it was, but UMass was hanging around. Just something to keep in mind going forward. I mean, Kirby Smart just does not really care about those type of games. I saw something that he's 0-13 when he's giving more than 35 or 38 points. So
wow,
not going to be happening rest of this year, but just something to keep in mind. I just got that little nugget before the game, and I was like, oh, let's take the UMass, and they covered with ease there. So just a fun one there.
Love it. Good for the Minutemen of UMass. Big shout out to them. Brings our overall record to 178, 174, and 8 pushes throughout the season. Gets us to 50.5 win percentage. I'm going to round that up to 51. So what do they say, Jared? If you're over 50%, you're considered an expert. So they'll just throw that out there.
Yeah, we are experts. That's what we claim ourselves, of course.
That's right. So anyway, another full slate ahead. Hopefully it's just as good as last week. Finally, some breaks our way. We're going to do this podcast same way as last week. We'll jump into recap quick, go over our winners and losers of the week, and then a quicker preview than normal, and just jump right into the kind of college football playoff discussion and how that breaks down, and then close it out with our bets and parlay of the week. So stay tuned for that. So roll right into it, Jared. We were in Yankee Stadium for your Fighting Irish on Saturday, so I missed some of these games, had to do a lot of homework, as they say, on Sunday and Monday, watching clips and what I missed. But I was able to catch Penn State most of that one, squeaking by Minnesota late. A couple big calls on the final drive for James Franklin, going for it 3 times on 4th down, converting all 3. The fake punt. Offense was definitely stagnant. Defense didn't play as well as they have all season. I think, I felt like this game was going to be closer. I saw you took them with the points. So I'm not really concerned by any means by Penn State. I knew this one they'd probably have to grind it out. It's been the same inconsistencies by them. I think we saw all season. Aller, I don't think, was on point. Didn't have his sharpest game. He didn't look bad. A couple big plays to help win the game. The main thing for Minnesota is I don't understand that kicking the field goal late in the fourth quarter there with 5 minutes left, 4th down and goal. I get what they're trying to do, but it's just, I felt like you have to go try to score a touchdown. Even if you don't get it, then who cares? Your plan is to get the ball back anyway. So force Penn State to go 3 and out, get the ball back. Minnesota could still win the game. So I just didn't understand that call, but nearly pulled off the upset and would have been a disaster for Penn State. Lose that, I'm sure they would have been out. So big break for them.
Yeah, I mean, Minnesota was flirting with the outright win, which was pretty crazy. I took them to cover. I thought they'd keep it close, but like you said, that late, I think it was 4th and 8 from the goal, so like a little bit farther away from the goal line, but still, I think close enough to give it a shot at the end zone. And if you get a couple of yards, get it down to the 1 or 2, then that's a good, field position going back the other way. But yeah, just a little concerning from Penn State. Like I'm not sure what to think of them now in the big picture. I mean, it's good they got the win. They're going to play Maryland this week, favored by 25, so they should be fine. But I mean, if you're talking, playoff win or two, or maybe getting into that Final Four, like a championship team, I'm just starting to have my doubts, like week over week here. With they've been winning these games, which is good, but they kind of been struggling with, with these opponents. So the offense just really Tyler Warren dependent. The receivers just can't really win on the outside. Still, the run game is there, but it should be a little better with those two backs, I feel like. And then the defense is doing their job of, not playing really bad, but not playing at an elite level or really good. So it's going to be interesting to see once we get to the playoff to see their matchups. We'll talk about later, but I think some of now these SEC teams are kind of playing themselves out of it. So I think some of these 5 to 8 seeds that are going to be hosting should have some favorable matchups. I don't know if Penn State will get burned maybe in that first round, but they're going to be a team that I'm keeping my eye on because of the sluggish appearances lately in some of these games. And it's good they got the win, but again, you got to take everything into consideration. Just a little concern for the Nittany Lions there.
Yeah, and we'll circle back with them once we get to the end when we talk about the playoff and how things break down. But yeah, definitely some question marks all around. But it seems like a lot of teams this year we've had that similar story with, where it seems like really it's just been Ohio State and Oregon kind of now separating themselves. We'll see what happens with Texas this week from the rest of the nation. So that could go right into Ohio State handling Indiana. They're 38-15. The score felt a little closer really than even it was. It felt like Ohio State just outplayed them around, on all sides of the ball, winning the line of scrimmage battle. It seemed like Ohio State's offense just did not stumble, take one step back. They kind of it wasn't much of a game. I know Indiana got the ball, went down the field, scored. Ohio State started a 3-and-out, and everybody was, in the first 5 minutes was concerned for them, and it looked like it could be a game. But after that first couple of drives, it was pretty much just Ohio State kind of coasting. I know you mentioned that late touchdown by them also. But yeah, they cover. I did have Ohio State. The questions now still remain with Indiana. What kind of team really are they? They're going to be in because of what, like you just highlighted, how the SEC did the last couple of weeks and all the craziness this past week and losing a lot of games. But yeah, Ohio State handles really Indiana at home.
Yeah, I think Indiana really got some help with some of those teams losing, giving them a little bit of a cushion. But I was just really surprised both sides with Ohio State's defense and Indiana's offense and lack thereof. Honestly, I think Ohio State's defensive line, like you said, really controlled it. Every time Indiana dropped back to pass, I felt like the quarterback got hit in like under 2 seconds. So D-line really got after it. Their defense looked really good. But then on the flip side, I was actually kind of impressed with the Indiana defense for most of the game. They were getting put in bad field positions, stuff like that. But when it was, if you just look at play by play, I felt like they actually handled Ohio State's defense or offense pretty good. They gave up one special teams touchdown, then another block punt that set them up at the 2, and they scored. And then they had that late touchdown that was should have been an under, but then it pushed on that one. So it's like 3 touchdowns right there. They kind of got handed to them. And then besides that, Ohio State's offense still a little bit concerns. Was impressed with Ohio State's defense, but the offense still a little clunky. They have a lot of pieces. Is Will Haller really the guy? Is he, an elite quarterback that could win a national championship, or is it just going to be the other guys in the team? But so yeah, it's just a couple of takeaways I got. The score looked good, but I was a little concerned with Ohio State's offense. And then Indiana going forward, that offense was lighting it up, and they got shut down pretty quickly. Couldn't even do anything. They barely got past midfield. It was pretty dominant for Ohio State there. So just a couple takeaways from that game there.
Yeah, and Ohio State has a big one this week too against Michigan. Obviously, they're fully expected to win that game, and we'll talk about it briefly in the next segment. But yeah, Indiana I think goes and plays Purdue, so they're safely in the playoff. We'll definitely watch Ohio State, Indiana. I don't know. I wasn't overly concerned really with their offense. I do think Indiana, it's a tough team. They were undefeated. I think if this was if this was Ohio State versus another top 5 team, would anybody else really be concerned? I feel like maybe, I don't know, we're giving Indiana a little bit too much credit based off of just their ranking. But we'll see. I mean, things are about to get real either way with the playoff, and all these teams will have to play each other. So I think we'll really get some answers. But yeah, Indiana couldn't get it done. They couldn't win their Super Bowl, but still have the season ahead of them, a chance to make the playoff. Just have to take care of business this week. Ole Miss going down in the swamp. This one was great, just unbelievable. Florida really turned their season around, got a big win over them. And yeah, Ole Miss just totally dropping the ball. Lane Kiffin here at the end of the season, chance to make the college football playoff. You go to Florida and you just lose outright. Disappointing for them. TikTok, Lane Kiffin, not sure what's going on there. Ole Miss, but could not do anything. How about Jackson Dart? I saw throwing 3 interceptions in a row at the end of that game. I know some people online were questioning if that was really him throwing the ball. It just was awful. I don't know what happened to him, or if they were trying to lose that game in the end. But yeah, disappointment for Ole Miss this season, which could have been a national championship season really for them at the end of the beginning of the year and the end of last year was all the hype in the world. And they just completely out of the mix now, totally played themselves out of the playoff.
Yeah, some of those picks at the end, if you watched it live or go back and watch it, you literally thought he was like purposely throwing the game away. It was that bad. The one, he literally was triple covered and all 3 defenders were like in the end zone. He threw it behind them and the guy made like a toe tapper in the back of the end zone for Florida to pick it off. Like it was one of the worst picks I've ever seen. Like I don't know what he was seeing there. But yeah, Ole Miss again. I feel like we've been mentioning this in every pod, like some of these SEC teams, right? When we hype them up or think, oh, they can make a little run or they're dangerous, they just fall off a cliff that next week. And I really thought Ole Miss was a team that could really make some damage in the playoff if they got there. And, just how dominant their defense has been. The offense was starting to click a little bit. And now they're probably not even going to make the playoff. So it's like I think they're squarely out. So, yeah, the defense did okay. I mean, Florida actually moved the ball better than I thought. It was more the offense that just couldn't get going against a bad Florida defense off of a bye. I don't know what Lane Kiffin feels making too many TikToks or getting a little distracted on the bye week, or they were reading too much into the newspaper clippings with them beating Georgia. But, I thought a week off would still help them. It wasn't right after that win, and they just looked really flat, couldn't get anything going, and had multiple chances at the end, like you said. But you got to give Florida credit. I think we mentioned this, that I like Billy Napier. I think he's an okay coach. He just gets such a bad rap in the media. Their schedule's been crazy, a couple injuries, but I like that DJ Lagway. I think he's going to be a good prospect for next year and years to come and stuff. And he's got those guys playing hard. They have not quit Florida when all the media kind of gave up on them and stuff. So got to give Florida some credit here. I think they're only 1 win away, or did they get their 6 wins? They might be in the bowl after their 4.5 season win total. So I think it's a successful season for Florida. Either way, big game against Florida State here, who was a corpse. So I think they could go bowling, which is some I think we did not see coming from a really tough schedule and a Billy Napier-led Florida Gators.
Yeah, they had an extremely tough schedule. I know at the beginning of the year we were looking, and if they went like 8-4, they probably would have been in the playoff for how difficult their schedule was. And yeah, they are 6 wins, 6-5. So good for Florida. They're 4-3 and 4-4 in conference, 6-5 overall, and like you said, another winnable game this week over Florida State. So I guess a chance to go 7-5 for the season would be quite a success for them. So yeah, we'll see what happens with Ole Miss. They need a lot of help, I think, to get in at this point with these auto. I'd say if it was all at large, they still have a possibility. But with the way that these two teams will jump right into it, Arizona State and BYU, what happened with them? One of those Big 12 schools are going to get in over an Ole Miss just because of these auto bids, and yeah, jump right into it. Arizona State up big in this game. I think it was 21-0, 28-9 with 2 minutes left in the third quarter. So BYU, have to give them some credit for coming back into this game and having a shot at the end. I think they had the ball with a chance to win with not much time left. But yeah, Arizona State just killing them early. Just got out unreachable for BYU. They came back at the end, but man, I just don't look at either of these teams like playoff teams. BYU now out of it. I mean, they're done at this point. So after starting 9-0 and dropping 2 straight. So that leaves us with Arizona State. So not sure if they're going to be the team or not. I mean, if they lose that Big 12 championship, which is very possible at this point, how this conference has been going. But yeah, right now it's ASU has played up themselves all the way back into the playoff hunt.
Yeah, who would have thought ASU, after how bad they were last year, new head coach, second year, just really making a big jump here. And, I think you said like they outplayed them. They really deserved to win this game. Got out to a big lead. I know I had BYU in the money line. Parlay didn't really have a chance. So yeah, got to give ASU a lot of credit. Now, I think that's a good question to ask. Can they compete, or can they, steal a game in the playoff if they continue this and get to the Big 12 championship? Still got to get there. I think the Big 12 still has a lot of chaos left yet to go. So it's going to be crazy with Arizona State. But I mean, you got to admit they're playing some good ball. And that was a crazy ending. Then they put the 1 second back on the clock. Did you see that? And then
It was insane.
fans that got off the field, the coach went ballistic during an interview, and just some wild scenes down there in Arizona State. I think some kids assaulted some players or something like that from Arizona State. So just an absolutely wild scene there. But we called it with BYU. We called that the downfall was going to come. They were not like a top 10, top 5 team like they were being power ranked and in the rankings. So finally came down. Now coming down even harder with a second straight loss. And but yeah, it's still some ball left to play in the Big 12. Going to be interesting to see who finally ends up winning this conference because there's been so much chaos. But a lot of props to Arizona State. They're getting a big win for them at home.
Yeah, there's still 4 6-2 Big 12 teams right now in conference: Arizona State, BYU, Iowa State, and now Colorado after their loss this past week. Yeah, that second was hilarious. That Kenny Dillingham screaming at the refs, like saying this is bullshit and just flipping out, and a lot of chaos at the end of that game. He does not look like a head coach. I mean, he looks like just like a fan, like out of the stands when you see him, which is pretty funny. But yeah, craziness still in the Big 12. I would almost bet Arizona State will screw this up and lose because just how this conference has been going all season. It seems like right when we finally have a team, they just drop. So I don't know. I might be back on like Iowa State or something weird to happen and get them back in. Just, all the craziness, how it's been. And part of that is this next game, Kansas knocking down Colorado. Finally, we thought Colorado could have been the team out of the Big 12. And I think me and you were both on Kansas last week. So that was a good pick. We got them outright. Didn't see much of this game, but really was just in control. Wasn't close, 37-21. Kansas Colorado just when things, are going their way and starting to get some respect, they just totally, blow it away. But a lot of credit to Kansas too. We've been talking about them. They have been playing some really good football the last few weeks. A lot of wins. I think this was their 4th ranked win in a row, which was crazy for them. I mean, if they just won one of those other Big 12 games they lost early, they could have found themselves late for a chance to win the Big 12. I think right now they might be the best team in the Big 12, just the way they're playing. I know they can't get to the championship, but yeah, disappointment for Colorado. But yeah, another huge win for Kansas.
Yeah, Kansas is absolutely on fire. I think I had said that last week as well. I think Kansas might be playing the best right now in the Big 12, and nobody wanted to, realize it with how bad their record was. And yeah. I think this is a great example for betting versus, just the regular viewer. Like all the betting markets were having a very close spread on this. And you look at their records, or you look at Colorado and how good they were playing and everything. And this just always comes down to show like Vegas knows, and you got to trust your power ratings. And a team might be undefeated like BYU a couple weeks ago, but then be getting faded in the market because another team might be 500, but they actually might be better than them. And some people just can't grasp that. And I think Kansas is better than Colorado, and they showed it, and they really dominated them. This was surprising to see Colorado's offense really sputter a lot. It was the Kansas defense really showing up. And the records were completely different, but Kansas, I think, clearly the better team here. Sucks they can't keep going and get to a Big 12 championship, but that's just one game to keep in mind, and just some going forward with some of these. Like, don't get fooled with the records, or if a team's scraping behind, winning all these games, but not looking great, but they're undefeated. You got to take everything into consideration. So Colorado finally falls here, but Travis Hunter Heisman still might be in the future with all these other things going on. So that's maybe the one bright spot in everything that Colorado kind of cares about is the Heisman and everything like that. So it might be a win for them. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of chaos ahead still in the Big 12, and Colorado could actually still find their way back in if things go right this week. I'd say it's unlikely at this point. I'd bet on that not happening, but anything's still possible for how the Big 12's been this year. And then the game we were at, Mr. Paisley, your Fighting Irish, just blowing away here, Army, 49-14. This game, it just wasn't close. Notre Dame, it was just scoring at will. It felt like they went down, scored. Army came back. They did get a touchdown. I think they're like third drive, and kind of made things interesting if Army was going to be able to consistently move the ball, but that just turned out not to be the truth at all. Army Notre Dame just looked better in all aspects of the field. Army just didn't have the guys. Notre Dame was winning up front. I mean, it really did felt like they were scoring at will. Like I would sit down in my seat, and then the next thing I know, Notre Dame got another 40-yard chunk play. So it wasn't much of a game. Army's probably now out of the playoff race. We said if they somehow pulled off a stunner, they could find themselves in. But it looks like Notre Dame now solidified themselves, assuming to get past Southern Cal, which we'll get to this week. But yeah, not much of a game there in Yankee Stadium.
Yeah, Notre Dame stays really hot as well as Kansas. Just playing really good ball. I think you said the offense, I think, was the key I wanted to see. Can Notre Dame's offense score against Army? Because if they were struggling, they could have kept that game close. Anything could happen. But if Notre Dame was moving the ball like they did against Navy, it was going to be a blowout, and it turned out to be the second portion of that. So, yeah, I mean, the run game just got going. They're really starting to find their groove with the offensive line, getting a lot of push. Both their running backs are really good. Jeremiah Love, I think, is one of the most underrated running backs or players in the country. He is so talented, and they kind of split carries or kind of split them up 70-30 with their backup, Jadarian Price. So if he was getting all the touches or kind of like a Genty-like workman every game, I think he'd be putting up some crazy numbers. So he's having a big year, and Riley Leonard continues to get better throwing the ball. I think with that run game really helps them open up more on the outside. So, Notre Dame's staying hot. We'll break down their game against USC later if they could get that one more win. But I feel like Army, too, and Indiana kind of group them together where, like, yeah, it was a really bad day for them, but I still think they're pretty solid teams. Like maybe not the elite category, but we weren't expecting Indiana or Army to be. I think they might be a year or two earlier, than we thought they were going to be. But I think Army still has a big game, conference championship against Tulane coming up next week. They already solidified their mark in that. So if they could keep that one close or maybe get a conference championship, that's still a very successful season for them. But yeah, I mean, we were in person there. It just, the two teams look completely different. Like it just didn't look like the same wavelength with the athletes and the speed and everything. So got to give a lot of props to Notre Dame. They just showed up, dominated, got a little close there. They won for it on 4th and goal and got stuffed 4 times. And then Army, they were only up 7, Notre Dame at that point, but then Notre Dame held them to a quick 3 and out, made them punt in their own end zone, that went down and scored. So that only felt like the little glimmer of hope Army kind of had. They would have got a drive together, maybe tied it up 14-14, but Notre Dame shut that down and just took it away from there.
Yeah. I think, Army definitely successful season for them. I mean, anytime we talk about winning all your games, they can't control their schedule. You got to win your games, and they did that to this point. I do think Army's decent. I don't know how good, like what happens if you throw Army, for example, in the Big Ten, like with that conference, like would they have enough to beat even like these Wisconsins and Minnesotas? And I think they could win some of them. I do think they would lose some of them. So I think they're decent. I just don't know if they're like, even with Indiana, like they were able to get through that Big Ten schedule. I'm not sure Army is quite even their caliber. I think Indiana's even just a step ahead of them. But maybe we'll get lucky in a bowl matchup or something if Indiana gets upset by Purdue. I don't think that'll happen. But anyway, yeah, still a very successful season for them. But definitely, I think that strength of schedule kind of showed that they just weren't up for the challenge against Notre Dame.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. Like, how would they fare in like a bigger conference and stuff? Because you saw the talent gap when they played Notre Dame. But yeah, I think that's a great point. The strength of schedule. Like, I mean, it happened the 11th week of the year, but it's like, I think the strength of schedule really showed up where it's like, if you don't play anybody all year and then you finally play a good team, you're not going to look at the same level as them, and like Indiana and Army did against Ohio State and Notre Dame. So just something to keep in mind, even when we get into the playoffs, because it might not be they played like one hard game all year. Like, another team maybe played 4 or 5 hard games. So just something to keep in mind. I think that's definitely something that's been showing up, is the team that has the harder schedule, been tested a little bit more, is definitely showing up and winning by margin here.
Right, exactly. Okay, so might as well jump right into winners and losers of the week. Always a fun little segment before we get to the week 14 preview quick, and then some college football playoff reaction, and then our bets will be last. So Mr. Paisley, who is your winner of this past week?
Yeah, I'm going to give I don't know if we ever shouted out this unit as a positive. I'm going to give the Michigan offense the winner of the week, putting up 50 points, Case. 50 points. It was against Northwestern, who actually has a pretty good defense. Did not watch any of this game. I had Northwestern plus 10.5, and that was at the picture in the first quarter.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not sure what Michigan did. I don't know if they could replicate it. I don't think they can this next week, but maybe they're just trying to run it up to get their season-long numbers up a little bit. But little shock seeing Michigan scoring 50 points against anybody. They haven't done that. I don't think they've cracked 30 all year, so that was pretty mind-boggling. But good for the Wolverines. Finally got something positive going on the offensive side of the ball. But I think their time is done coming into this Ohio State game. I think Ohio State got some big revenge. We'll break down here in a little bit, but got to give Michigan flowers here. 50 points. Didn't believe it, but good job for the Wolverines.
Yeah, no, big win for them. I didn't think they put up 50 either. They've been playing a little bit better. I mean, we saw Indiana. Michigan nearly knocked off Indiana a week ago. So, they've had glimpses of being a full football team. I think it's just because they're Michigan and they're coming off the national championship that we're declaring this an absolute god-awful season. But if this Michigan was called Rutgers, we'd be saying, wow, the Rutgers is playing pretty well this year. So I think it is some name brand bias. But yeah, give them some credit. They put up 50 with, no quarterback on their roster. So I'm not sure how that's possible, but they found a way to do it. And you scared me, Jared, because when you said we haven't talked about this, anything positive about this team this year, that is actually similar with my winner. It's Mississippi State, because Mississippi State, they haven't won a lot of games this year, maybe one or two, but watching Ole Miss lose to Florida, I think has to be Mississippi State Super Bowl. I mean, there's a very strong rivalry between them. We're going to get into that game. Actually, well, not really, but the Egg Bowl on Friday this year between Mississippi State and Ole Miss, always just a fun game. I'm disappointed it's not on Thanksgiving like it usually is this year, but got to give Mississippi State fans a big win. They have to feel good watching their arch nemesis go down and play themselves out of the playoff. Have to have a good feeling. I know that feeling being a Bears fan with Green Bay. I always look forward to them losing in the playoffs every year. So since my team can't get there, might as well root against somebody else. So got to give them a win. Got to be a good feeling for Mississippi State just to watch Ole Miss go down.
Yeah, sometimes your biggest win is somebody else's loss. So you kind of hinted at that game. We'll get to that later, Case, in some of our best bets. But Mississippi State might be too many points they're getting. I kind of we'll get to that one a little bit later. But we like that one for Mississippi State.
All right, Pace, who's your loser?
I had a couple, and then I was like, I'll just group it all in the one conference. But I'll just go the SEC. Kind of just take the low hanging fruit. But I just think the SEC, they always are claiming, we got a notepad coming up. Did you have the same thing?
I did.
we could piggyback on this one a little bit, but I just want to talk in general about the SEC and their fans and the media and Paul Feinbaum and all these people on ESPN. I know they have ties to the SEC and they put a lot of games in there, but the best conference in the country and all this stuff. And, I don't know if it's a good thing or bad thing, but now they're cannibalizing each other. And now they're going to be losing out with all these losses. So, I was looking for some of these teams like Ole Miss, like Alabama, LSU maybe back in the middle of the season, to Texas A&M even last week, to take that next step and be that elite team. And if you want to be considered a great conference or have some really top-end teams, you got to start winning. And at the end of the day, now these records just aren't going to hold up with these 3 losses.
Right.
It's just not going to hold up. So you could talk all you want. And that's great that some of these lower end schools like Florida or, like some of these teams are Auburn are upsetting you. But, that's good for the conference as a whole. But for these top end teams and some of these programs that consider themselves like, we want to be a leader. We didn't have the 14 playoff now. We need more because we could have won it that year. Now you're going to miss on the 12-team playoff. It's just kind of frustrating with all the hype they get. And it's like they're kind of just coming up a little short. And even some of the teams that are going to make it, we'll see Texas this week. Georgia hasn't looked that great. No. So it's like even the teams that are going to make it might get upset in the early round, but we'll see. But yeah, the SEC just in general, not a good showing this year.
Yeah, they were my pick as well. I first time this year, I think we had the exact same response on this, and it's the SEC. I mean, same thing. You just look through. They're trying. I feel like at this point to play themselves out. I mean, to your point with the media propping them up, it seems every year and talking about like a couple weeks ago when Indiana was still unbeaten, everybody's like, well, Tennessee would beat them by 50 and Georgia would beat them by 50 and Alabama would beat them by 50. Well, yeah, Alabama just lost by practically 50, could have lost by 50 to an awful Oklahoma team this past week. Just a terrible game by them. So yeah, disappointment for the SEC as a whole. Not good. Kalen DeBoer, not good. Ole Miss, as we saw, just got the big loss against Florida. We'll see what happens with Tennessee, Georgia, Texas. But right now, I mean, there's a scenario where we see a lot of these SEC teams miss. I mean, Alabama has no business being in the playoff. I have no idea how they're ranked 13th in the country.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the team lost to Vanderbilt, and the team just got blown out by Oklahoma. Oklahoma's not a good team. Like, what are we? I don't get it. Like, if Penn State lost 3 games, and Vanderbilt is not, I mean, they're having a good season, but they are not by any means a powerhouse. Oklahoma, which is a bad team this year, I just don't get I still think we're seeing the bias and with these rankings.
Yeah.
But we'll see. Thankfully, the playoff will let this thing hopefully all play out with itself, assuming we don't get any snubs or anything. But SEC, not good. Not a good week for them. We'll see what happens this week in rivalry week. So disappointing for them.
Yeah, and I just think one other quick point. You made a great point. Like, oh, this SC team would beat them by 40. Like in the past, as a Notre Dame fan, we played Alabama in that playoff where we went down to Georgia. Like I was so scared because I'm like, this is just gonna be a blow. We have no chance of competing. I think that's over with. Like I think any of these top tier teams can go into an SEC score, play them at a neutral site, and that game's gonna be close. So I just think that people being scared of the SEC or Alabama, Georgia, I think that's kind of lost its luster. I mean, you saw even with Ole Miss beating Georgia this year, and then now Oklahoma, you're right, beating Alabama at home, had no business. Vanderbilt beating them and not being scared. So I just think a lot of these teams are kind of losing that edge and kind of losing that. And it's going to make for great games. You're not going to see a lot of blowouts, I think, like we used to in the past in the playoffs. But yeah, this SEC bias is still crazy, and I think you gotta take a step back and really see what's going on with the SEC.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I would, even as Penn State a few weeks ago, I'd be like, well, I don't want to play Ole Miss and I don't want to play Georgia, but at this point, I don't really care because I'll play anybody. It's just been looked so inconsistent all over the country this year that let it play out. But yeah, I don't think even like Notre Dame, I think we're going to see a lot of close spreads in this year's playoff just based off some of these early games. Like I don't know, I don't see any like clear, even Texas like.
Yeah,
we'll see. They haven't played really anybody either this year. I mean, Texas and Penn State have very similar strength of schedules, and we'll see what happens with them this week. They're going to College Station, so a lot of unanswered questions that we'll find out soon how good the SEC really is.
Yeah, and just one last point. UMass hung around a little bit, so if UMass could do it, I think a lot of these other top tier schools.
Good point. All right, so that was our winners and losers of the week. Always fun. Jump now into the Week 14 preview. Rivalry week across college football. Ton of games like we were talking. Like nobody has a bye. I mean, they start actually as early as Thanksgiving. I don't know if there's any Thanksgiving games. I think there's one actually. Yeah, we get into a whole slate Friday. So we're actually we're releasing this today, Wednesday, a little early here on Twitter, the PB podcast. So full week of bets. Might as well, though, just skip over these Thursday and Friday games, go right into Ohio State, Michigan. Michigan, not much of a great team this year. Obviously, they put up the 50 against Northwestern, which makes things interesting. Michigan has a chance to push Penn State in the Big Ten championship if they were to pull off quite an upset here in the Horseshoe. Total is 42.5. Ohio State is a 3-touchdown favorite right now. It's 20.5 on DraftKings. I like Ohio State in this one pretty big. I do think, I know rivalry games are, you get close ones, but at the same time, Ohio State, I feel like has had this circled for a while after the last few years. Michigan coming off their national championship. I think there is a clear competitive advantage of talent and, just teams overall, and it's at home. Maybe this thing starts out a little slow, like it seems with Ohio State this year. Maybe Michigan gets I wouldn't be shocked if it's like a fluke play early or something, but I think play straight for 4 quarters. I expect Ohio State to be able to pull away in this one.
Yeah, this one's interesting. So I agree with you. The rivalry games, you want to be very cautious laying very big numbers. You see it in the NFL with some of the division games like the Ravens and Steelers, or those games are just always close. Doesn't matter how good or bad the teams are. And I think you could kind of use some of that logic for some of these rivalry games. Kind of Alabama-Auburn, which is also on the docket. Like those games always seem to be close, but there's some huge spreads and stuff. So I think, though, I would be scared to lay big numbers, but this is the only game I think there's an exception, and I'm kind of with you. I kind of like Ohio State to roll here. because of the history in the last 3 years of what happened and the blowouts. I mean, Michigan, when they beat Ohio State, they were blowing them out too. The last two times they beat them. So last year was a little bit closer, but I think this is such a big rivalry. They both hate each other a lot. So I wouldn't be shocked if Ohio State runs it up and scores, maybe a garbage time or 2 touchdowns late to kind of push this game over and really embarrass Michigan if they can, if they're in that spot. Kind of like the over here too. I just felt this number is really low. I mean, Michigan's offense put up 50. They're a fireworks show now. I think they get a touchdown or 2. But I expect Ohio State to really, like you said, open this game up with their offense. I think maybe they're really going to exploit it here, really go full go effort here. Maybe some trick plays, or a little bit wrinkle maybe they haven't shown all year. I think they're going to try and put up as many points as they can. They will not be holding back, kind of going for it on 4th downs, those high variance situations. So I feel like they're going to be super aggressive, put up a lot of points. They can maybe even get this total by themselves. I think they're going to put up 30, 40 plus here. And then we just need Michigan to score a little bit. So I'll be taking Ohio State and the over in this one. Maybe just a unit play on each. I wouldn't love Ohio State, but that rivalry that's kind of holding me back to making it like a best bet or a 2-3 unit lock play. So I'm just gonna play 1 unit on Ohio State in the over.
If Michigan does the unthinkable and somehow upsets Ohio State, it would be shockwaves across the country. I assume Ryan Day is fired, right?
I think so. Yeah, I think you would.
Have to fire Ryan Day if you can't win this game. But yeah, I'm with you. I think Ohio State rolls here. They're just better, and like you said, it's a rivalry game. I do think Michigan will be motivated for this, but it just won't be enough. I think Ohio State's gonna just want to rip them to shreds at home too, in front of their crowd. So don't have to go anywhere. And yeah, I'm with you on the over. That seems low. I should double check that number, but
that's right. Yeah, I think it's right.
42.5, definitely. Yeah, I like the over. Which kind of makes me now rethink why it's low. But no, I like Ohio State big. Will be a fun one, rivalry week. We'll see what happens with them, Michigan and Ohio State. Also, rivalry, South Carolina going to Clemson. All of a sudden, South Carolina is in the playoff at-large discussion because of what's been happening around them in the SEC. They've just been kind of slowly winning some big games. And same with Clemson. They could really find an at-large bid too, just because of all the chaos that's happened this past week. And then, I would be willing to bet the winner of this game gets in. I don't know how yet. We'll have to look at how these playoffs shake out, but I don't know. I think this is a big game for them both, and I think it's practically a playoff game. And Clemson not playing in the ACC championship, it may work out perfect if they win this game and then don't play in the ACC championship. They don't have to risk a loss there. I have to look at how it could happen, and we'll get into the bracket, but huge game for them both. Both playing pretty good. Totals at 49.5. I actually have a play on this later, so I'll let you go, Pays. I won't spoil it for everybody, but want your thoughts on this one, South Carolina, Clemson.
I like it. Little tease to the end there. Yeah, I was a little shocked by this line. I'm a huge South Carolina fan. I think their defense is one of the best in the country. Clemson kind of sputtering a little bit against Pitt. That game they should have probably lost outright, and Pitt's not that great of a team. Their records are pretty good, but they're not that great. But yeah, I think South Carolina is really flying under the radar. They have some losses that really put them behind the 8 ball early in the year, but they were close losses. They should have beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa. And I just think this team is a lot better than people give them credit for. If their offense could get rolling just a little bit, I think this defense could really play an elite level of ball on that side. And it's in Clemson, which is a little bit, a little dicey, but I think this game is so intriguing. This is a game that no one's really talking about in the national media, but is really intriguing with both teams being right on that cusp of the 12 seed. And I think you're right that if one of these teams wins and maybe looks really good, I think they could really just play themselves right into it. So this has a lot of big implications, but I'm just kind of leaning. I just trust South Carolina a little bit more here. I'm not really sure what's going on with Clemson lately. So I was a little shocked they were opening as a short favorite. So I'll gladly take South Carolina with the points and take a little cheap money line too to have them win it outright. Total, not really sure. I think this could be really boom or bust with both defenses. Could be elite, but then they could be a little leaky with some of the final scores if you look at these schedules. So staying away from the total, but I think South Carolina gets it done. And then you're right, maybe plays them way to an at-large. They'll definitely have their hat in the ring.
Yeah, no, they're going to be right in the discussion with a win here if they get it. And as you said, yeah, Clemson slight favorite at this one, probably at home. They say you get about 3 points for home. So practically a pick 'em, but Clemson the slight Vegas edge there for them. Notre Dame and USC going at it there in Southern Cal. Paisley, how you feeling with the Irish? You're a touchdown favorite, 7.5. USC does been a kind of a weird team all year. Definitely disappointing season to say the least with them. Got that huge win over LSU early in the season, kind of propped them up, and then almost got a win over Penn State. They were playing a little bit better at this point. At that point, season kind of fell off right around there. Squeaked it out against UCLA last week. They made the quarterback change. However, we've been talking about, battle-tested teams. Notre Dame hasn't had a brutal schedule, to say the least. They have a couple nice wins over these military academy schools, but outside of that, they got to win over Louisville. And but still, outside of that big week 1 game at Texas A&M, probably their biggest road game. It's tough to travel out there all the way out to Southern Cal. So what are your thoughts here? Notre Dame, a slight, not really slight, 7.5 points they're laying.
Yeah, I think all the points you laid out are fair and correct, honestly. Like Notre Dame, I think this is going to be their biggest test since Texas A&M. I think Army was a good test pre-game, and then you look at all about it after. It really wasn't that much of a test, but this one's a little scary. I think USC could pose some problems, but I do feel pretty confident in Notre Dame, which is some I rarely say, but just the way they're playing, the style they're playing, if the defense could keep this up. I mean, if you look at their final scores, I don't think anybody cracked 20. I think only one team did. I think it was Louisville back in the middle of the season. So this is going to be a huge test for them and their defense against – I kind of like this backup quarterback better than the starter for USC, than Miller Moss. He's a little bit more mobile, a little less accurate, but it could definitely give him a little dynamic in the run game, could scramble around a little bit more. I didn't get to watch much of that UCLA game last week after the Notre Dame game, but it was kind of UCLA was up most of the game, and then USC had a couple scores in the fourth quarter to win like 19-12 or something was the final score, 17-12. So I don't think their offense is that explosive. So I feel like with Notre Dame, you just got to, just to win the game, maybe get to that 21-28. Now you bring in the spread. I think it gets a little more dicey with that. I do feel comfortable with Notre Dame winning this game. I just think they're playing really hot. They do have to travel out, which is a little bit tougher, but I just think they have advantages all over. USC really can't stop the run. If they could somehow stop the run, USC, then it could maybe make for an interesting game, but I just think they're going to be doing the same things they've been doing the last couple games where the offense puts up a lot of points. They're not really getting, tested too heavily. And then it's just on the defense. I think this maybe could be a little bit of a higher scoring-ish game in like the, mid-20s, maybe closer to 30. But I think Notre Dame's offense has a good day again here against USC defense. And then it's just going to come down to, can the defense get enough stops to get this game over the margin? I took them at 6.5 when it first opened on Sunday. It was one of the first bets I made. Now it's 7.5. That is a key number. Now you got to win by more than just one score. So I would honestly probably lay it with Notre Dame if I had to pick it. I do like it at 6.5. Probably would still play it at 7.5. I think Notre Dame just kind of wears on you, kind of like the Eagles in the NFL, like where that run game just keeps wearing, and then they break off a big run like we saw in Yankee Stadium in the second half. So I think you're right. I think it could be a little close early, kind of like a Michigan-Ohio State game. But then I just think as the game keeps going on, I think Notre Dame could pull away and get a comfortable win here.
Yeah, I agree with those points you laid out. I do expect Notre Dame to win this. It is obviously difficult to travel in college football, and some question marks about schedule and battle tested. But yeah, USC kind of seems like more an experiment mode right now, where we don't really know their offense with the change of the quarterback. They kicked 4 field goals against UCLA, so I don't know how well they are moving the ball, but maybe they were getting down there and just kind of failed to get in. So maybe watch for that. Maybe they could have been able to put up some more points against UCLA, but kind of failed to do that. So yeah, it'll be an interesting game, but definitely big one for Notre Dame. I mean, we say it with a lot of teams, but obviously Notre Dame more so because they don't have that conference championship. They got to win this one. It's practically their first playoff game, if you think about it. I mean, every game since Northern Illinois has been a playoff game for them. So it's been big, but this one more so than anything, just because, you got to travel there. USC is still, they're a Big Ten school. They're, they have some talent across the field, some 4 and 5 stars. So anything could happen, but I as well sometimes rarely feel too confident in Notre Dame. I do think this one, though, they shouldn't have any issues with USC. I fully expect them to win this game. We'll see. That one's, I guess, 3:30 on Saturday. So we'll be good.
Yeah, I think the motivation factor is another big thing. Like you said, I mean, USC season's kind of over. Not sure if they're even in a bowl game or if they'd be interested in a bowl game. And you're right. Notre Dame knows they need this. They cannot afford a loss with a game here. And then just one other thing, like they definitely had an easy schedule for sure, but they have been covering by margin if you look at it from a betting perspective because of how many scores they're just getting later in the second half. So that's just something to keep in mind. Like when they do when they're hitting good and hitting hard on offense, they explode and they'll put up a lot of points on you. So just something to keep in mind. They have had an easy schedule, but they have been covering. I think they covered every game since might have been that Louisville game was the only one they maybe didn't cover, but so they've been a really good ATS machine so far. Let's see if they keep it up one more here.
Yeah, it'll be fun to watch. 7.5 they're laying as of now. Might change a little bit. And then finally, we'll just jump into the biggest game, I guess you could say. I'm not even sure now with A&M's dropping their bad loss against Auburn, which we didn't even highlight in our recap. But yeah, that was we could highlight it a little bit now. Texas going to College Station. Big game in the SEC. I think A&M could actually still get in the SEC championship with a win here. I'd have to look at how all that breaks out. I mean, it's just been chaos all year. Texas only laying 5.5. They haven't really had a tough schedule either. They kind of dodged a bullet there in the SEC. They may have to, figure out long-term how to fix that and find like a pod system. So, we don't have these crazy schedule differentials. But yeah, a big game for both of these teams. Probably more so Texas A&M, just if they want any, shot at a playoff. Texas could probably lose this game and still get in. Just how it's all shaking out and how a lot of other teams have lost around them. And, it is going to be a tough place to play. You got to go to A&M, a rivalry game. The line's only 5.5. And I think we're going to get a lot of questions answered on really how good Texas is now getting, their first real big test since Georgia.
Yeah, this one should be a lot of fun. I'm really excited to watch this one late Saturday night here at primetime in College Station. Going to be a tough atmosphere. I mean, LSU had that bad loss at Texas A&M where they won it running away. But yeah, I expect a good showing from Texas A&M here. I think we're both kind of on the same page where we kind of believe in Texas A&M a little bit more with their schedule and their tests than what Texas had to face. And Texas had kind of an easier schedule, and they haven't been looking that dominant really in most of their games. And you look back to that Arkansas game, that was also on the road at a noon start. And they were really struggling on offense. I'm just more concerned with this Texas offense with Quinn Ewers and all the pieces they have. I just don't think they're really elite. I like Texas A&M's defense overall. I mean, that game last week against Auburn was pretty crazy. It was a bad spot for Texas A&M. I think I took Auburn, and I saw a lot of people taking Auburn. And Auburn got out 21-0, and then Texas A&M battled back to 21-21, and then it was kind of just back and forth and some chaos there. I mean, that guy dropped the 2-point conversion on the last play there. Really could have kept going if he would have just caught it. So you never know what's going to happen. I hate the 2-point conversion rule at the end there to decide a game. So I think a lot of people are just taking a lot away from that loss, but I think Texas A&M still has a lot of bolts in the chamber ready to go. And I think they've been kind of preparing. I think that's kind of why they came out a little slow and sluggish against Auburn, was because they were maybe looking forward to this game coming up this week. So I think they've really been putting in a lot of time, a lot of effort into this. But so has Texas. But I just think at home, under the lights here in Texas A&M and College Station, I think they have a couple wrinkles, score a couple points. And this Texas defense, it's been playing pretty good, but again, hasn't really been tested. I don't know if Texas A&M could fully test them. I expect this one to be a grinded out, defensive battle here, but I see Texas A&M staying within the number, 5.5. It's been coming down a little bit at the open at 6.5. So I think they could kind of flirt with maybe an outright win that we'll maybe get to later. But I do like Texas A&M to kind of just keep up with the theme of this SEC and muddy it up a little bit and get an upset win.
Yeah, I think I like A&M too in this one. It will not surprise me if they knock off Texas, just how this season has been going. And yeah, Texas had a lot of close games. I mean, with Vanderbilt too, just squeaking out that one by a field goal. They didn't really look dominant, like even against Mississippi State. Like there was signs of some sputtering just all around on offense, and we saw what happened with Georgia too. So I do think this is a winnable game for A&M. And yeah, just looking at the standings, you got Texas by themselves right now, so they win. They're obviously playing for the SEC championship, but then right behind them you have 3 two-loss teams, one of them being Texas A&M. So it's Texas A&M, Tennessee, and Georgia all right there. So, yeah, we'll definitely a winnable game. I think for A&M should be a good one. I don't expect this one to get lopsided. I would be really surprised at that. I don't think A&M would let themselves get blown out at home, although we have seen that happened. Tough places like LSU this year when we didn't think it happened. So we'll see. But, yeah, really should be a fun game, kind of just the last really good regular season college football games before we get into the absolute chaos of the college football playoff, which we'll get into right about now. But yeah, big one under the lights, College Station. I think those tickets are like $1,000. Jared, we were looking into going earlier, but it was not feasible economically to go out there and spend $1,000 on a ticket and probably another 150 inside on drinks. So just wasn't
a lot of the price range there for us.
Yeah. So that's pretty much our preview of this upcoming week, rivalry week, Thanksgiving. And now just a little bit of the playoff. I mean, like we highlighted with Texas and Texas A&M. I do think there's a path for A&M with a win here, just because it opens up the SEC conversations. And I do also believe I do believe that Texas, even with a loss, will still be pretty safely in, just because of the circumstances. Could be a little bit craziness right now. We see Clemson sitting out. Will they get in with a win over South Carolina? Would that, push, any of these other teams like Indiana or SMU? I mean, what happens with SMU if they lose the ACC championship? And I guess that's kind of our biggest question. Last week it was, what happens with Indiana? We saw that play out. They're still, it looks like, in now, regardless of what happened in Columbus. The next question is, will these conference championship losses affect, could Tennessee lose to Texas, and will they jump out? Will they be out over a Clemson? And that's just kind of some of the juggling that the committee is going to have to work with, I guess, over the next 2 weeks. I'm not sure how you do it. Somebody's going to be unhappy, just is every year. But, that's the biggest question. Will those conference championship games, a loss there, push you out? Will they penalize you?
Yeah, I think after these rankings, I was more intrigued with the ACC and how that's going to shake out with them now putting SMU in the hypothetical after this week. So you're right. I think if Clemson wins, if SMU loses in the conference championship and Miami wins the conference, what do you do with those three teams? Do you put all three in? Do you put two? Do you only put one, depending on the SEC and how that shakes out? So just going to be real. I'm going to be keeping an eye on that with the SEC. Clemson could kind of backdoor it if I think they would need Miami to lose this week, and then they would have to beat South Carolina. I think they would get into the ACC championship game. So SMU, I was really, really intrigued by them to see them in the top 12, 10 spot in the bracket there. So that's going to be interesting to see. And then, like you said, I mean, Indiana, which is probably right with all the other teams losing, still being in the field. That'd be a fun one if Penn State plays Indiana, a little Big Ten matchup there in the hypothetical. And like we talked about with Ohio State at that 5 seed, which is looking like it's going to be them. But if they beat Oregon in the Big 12 champion or Big 10 championship, if they get there, that could shake up a little bit. Then you'd go play Arizona State and Boise State. And I was looking at some hypothetical spreads, like they'd be close to 20-point spread against Arizona State, and then like 16 or 17.5-point spread against Boise. And that's your first 2 playoff games. So that 5 spot, you might want to stay in that 5 spot for Ohio State, not to purposely lose a Big Ten championship, but still a lot yet to play out. And I think some of these will get shuffled. And keep your eye on Miami too this week. I think going to Syracuse, that defense has not been good, and Syracuse could put up some points. That one I think could be a pretty crazy matchup. And then if they lose, then what do you do with Miami then? So it's going to be still a wild finish here in the last week of the regular season.
Yeah, no, I think that's big. If Miami loses to Syracuse, I feel like they're out. I don't know. Like, I know there's been a lot of losses kind of around them to help that case. What you do with the 10-2 ACC team, but I don't know. I can't believe they would even be in the hunt at this point. But I don't know. I guess to your point, like, who do you replace them with? Like, you have, I guess, South Carolina there hovering right outside the bubble, and then you still have Ole Miss, and we saw what happened with them. So I guess anything's possible. All those teams, like if you're Clemson, you're Alabama, you're Ole Miss, you're South Carolina, those kind of are probably the only out teams right now that could still get in based off of losses ahead of them. But yeah, it's going to be, what do they do with another loss, Miami, or, if any of these teams really lose ahead of them, will there be any wiggle room? as far as that Penn State Indiana game, yeah, I would be fine with this. This would be fun. We haven't played Indiana this year. It'd be a Big Ten game. I'm kind of still rooting though for an SEC school. Like I just would love to see Tennessee or just really any of these opponents. I mean, Georgia would be cool. It doesn't look like that's going to happen at this point, assuming Georgia beats Georgia Tech. And if they lose that, I would imagine they're also out of the playoff. But yeah, not a bad path for them under this circumstance, because I think Indiana is certainly a winnable game at home. And then I have no problem with playing Miami in a neutral site. I think that's another winnable game. I think the spread would be really close. So that's a great path to the playoff, I think, for a team like them. I would not want to have like an Oregon or an Ohio State or even really Texas or whoever comes out of the SEC in that second round. So outside of Boise State right now, I think Miami's definitely would be the weakest of those four.
Yeah, I would agree. I'd love to play Miami in a second round matchup if you're one of those teams that could get past your first round. And then Alabama, I think you got to throw them out there too, because the committee loves to have them in. I mean, they just have such a big draw, the huge fan base, and it is a little bit about the money at the end of the day. So sometimes they don't really put the most deserving teams. They'll usually give it maybe sometimes to a team they'll give them the best rating and everything. So it's going to be interesting to see with Alabama. And then we talk about SMU. If they get to the AC championship, do they get blown out? If they keep it close, like I think that would be a big storyline too, to see how their playoff hopes will be. Like if they get torched, then they're going to be like, all right, they do not like putting these low-end schools like we saw last year with Liberty against Oregon, because they just know it can be blowouts. They might rather put in an Alabama or a Ole Miss even, or South Carolina or somebody like that, just to know they could give maybe a better game. But I think just one other last point with like these 1, 2, 3, 4s that we've been seeing in this graphic, like you kind of just think like, oh, Miami's 3, and like Texas is up there too, but just because of those first round buys. But we were talking about a little bit before, what if Texas loses, or what if Miami loses this week, or in the ACC championship, or Texas even loses Texas A&M this week? How much would that shake? Because we just think, oh, they're 3 or 4 because that's what we've been seeing, but technically they're not. They're kind of a little bit farther back. So I think that could be a major shakeup if it happens.
Right. Yeah. No, I feel. Yeah, under most years, I would think, if you're 6th ranked Miami and you lose to Syracuse, I feel like you probably fall like to 15, 16 range. So that would push them out. I think Texas has a little bit more wiggle room, just being up there all the way up at 3 and then still, going to a tough place. I feel like maybe they would drop them from like 3 to 7 or 3 to 8. I feel like they would be in, but I don't know. This is all new, the 12-team playoff. And I guess that's going to be the biggest kind of question mark in the next year. Is how will these, like, obviously this is a big week, but then, how will the conference championship affect the rankings? Will they penalize you for losing? Like, I guess if South Carolina, or I guess South Carolina's out of the SEC championship. I think, do they have, they have 3. I think they have 3 lost. So it's basically a team like Georgia, what happens with them if they go and then now they lose? Like they don't have near as much wiggle room as Texas does. They're sitting all the way ranked at 7th. So you would think if you lose at 7, you probably fall to around that 11, 12 range. I don't know. I mean, it's going to be close. I do think you're right, though. I think there'll be some bias here at the end. If Alabama's right there, I think they find them in. Even Clemson, I think they'd like to see Clemson back in the playoffs. So 2 of those, we had a little bit of a dynasty kind of between Clemson and Alabama in the early, parts of the 2010s, and really just up until the last couple of seasons. They've been in the mix every year. So I think it would be fun to see them in. And just my kind of last point on this whole thing, I love the 12-team playoff and the fact that, we're sitting here on November 27th talking about like 15 teams that think they have a chance. And especially this year more than ever, just for how wide open it is and no real like clear top elite teams. It seems like everybody looks beatable one way or the other on any given day. I do just not like how the one negative is I just don't like these auto bids early. I don't like the Boise States up there. I'm all for giving these teams a chance, but it's got to be like at large, or get rid of the conference championship games altogether. Maybe, I mean, similar like an NFL model where, you don't play like the top 2 NFC North teams at the end to like, crown an NFC North champion. And I know it's completely different. You only have 4 teams, but my point is, since we're adding all these games and clearly there's an argument, would you rather get the bye or would you rather be that 5 seed? I would rather be that 5 seed as a Penn State fan. Like I'm rooting for Ohio State to beat Michigan for sure, just because I don't want to go to play Oregon. And what if Penn State loses by 30 to Oregon? Then we're probably out. So I would not want to risk that. So my point is there has to be a way moving forward, I think, to either eliminate the championship games, just crown a champion based off of regular season champion like we used to do, BCS era, get rid of the championship games, and then have 12 at-larges. Or if we want to have an auto bid, fine, but they should just be auto bids like the 12 seed, or we shouldn't be giving them these top four like Boise State. Like why are they a fourth right now? They're probably they probably lose to 18 or 19 teams in the country, just being honest. So they should a little bit of favor, it makes out, for them. But that's the one negative is they got to, I think, find a way moving forward with these championship games and how that will affect the bracket.
Yeah, and I think you're spot on with that, with the conference championship. You could tell they're definitely putting an emphasis on them, but maybe a little bit too much. Like you're saying, like, yeah, just because you win your conference, should you be the 3-4 seed? Yeah. They should also just give it to the Big Ten and SEC. They get their 1 and 2 seed, and then everyone else just kind of is all up for grabs, because it's just kind of, you're right, it's ridiculous. If you're Ohio State, you think, oh, we didn't have, we missed out on a championship or maybe a first round bye, but then you kind of have an easier path that we've been saying. And then, in other cases, you have a harder path. So it's kind of ridiculous. We'll see how it plays out this year. If like Boise could keep a game close, or if Arizona State could maybe keep a game close or upset it, then it won't be as bad. But if Ohio State, in this hypothetical, just blows out Arizona State and Boise State and gets the semifinals, winning by 20 points each game, like, it's pretty ridiculous. So I think that'll be something the committee has to look at as maybe a little amendment or a little change possibly.
Yeah, and I do think they will try to want to avoid that based off, because they don't want the bad PR. They want everything to be positive. So I have some faith here going into the final couple weeks that we'll get some good matchups. And I mean, this is fine, but it shows the loophole. Ohio State should not be they should not have a path to the semifinal with going through Arizona State and Boise State. That just shouldn't happen. I'd be fine with it though if it was Penn State, but Ohio State, no, should not happen.
Yeah, and I think just last point with this bracket that just came out, like we were talking, the 5 through 8 teams who are hosting, maybe we'll have some better matchups now. Some of these SEC teams playing their way out of it, instead of having some of these tough teams that have a lot of talent, but the record's not good. Now you might be facing SMU and Indiana or Arizona State, where you could have faced an Alabama, Ole Miss, or South Carolina or Clemson. So still a lot to play out. But in this current, with what happened last weekend, I think if you're hosting a home playoff game, you actually might have a pretty good matchup than you thought prior to the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. So it'll be exciting. Got a couple of weeks, one last week here, regular season, then championship week, and then we'll get the bracket. I think it's December 8th, so can't wait. Looks like at this point, Notre Dame and Penn State should both be hosting Mr. Paisley, so that's pretty exciting. We'll see. Got to win this week though for both, but should be fun. All right. Already over the hour, so might as well get right into it. Week 14 bets and our parlay. Mr. Paisley, I'll kick it to you. What's one of your early here Thanksgiving bets that you're giving out to the great people?
Yeah, and this one is the only game on Thanksgiving. Actually, we're going to touch on Memphis and Tulane. So there'll be a lot of NFL going on, but if you want to have the one college game going on, I think it's at nighttime. We're going to take the over in the Memphis-Tulane game at 55. I just thought this number is super low. I actually checked the weather right before we hopped on, because I was like, is something going on with the weather here or something? And there's a little chance of rain in the morning in Louisiana, but not a lot during the game time. So it's going to be a little bit colder than normal. So I don't know if that's it. But these two teams are electric on offense, and both their defenses are subpar, especially Memphis's. Their defense is horrendous, and we've been talking about Tulane a little bit here. I think their offense is really starting to click. They got a really good run game, very explosive. Could kind of hit some passes down the field. So I just thought this one would be in the 60s. So I'm just really shocked. This one's at 55. It was at 56, kind of coming down a little bit. So maybe just have to read in. Maybe there's some injuries or something, but I don't think so. I think everything looks kind of clear on the surface. So give me a little Thanksgiving over. Nice to root for. A lot of points there between Memphis and Tulane on Thursday night.
I like it. Should be something to watch there. You have your Thanksgiving dinner, and then just we'll go watch some points being scored in the Memphis-Tulane game. So, and big game too for Tulane, like you highlighted there.
Yeah,
well, both teams actually. Yeah. I'm also going to give out a Thanksgiving pick, although it's being played on Black Friday this year. Egg Bowl. Give me Mississippi State with those points, 26 points. Ole Miss just collapsed their season, which it looks like last week against Florida, losing that one. I think this is a bitter, it's a big rivalry game. Mississippi State would probably do anything to win this game. This is their Super Bowl. I don't think they're going to win this game, but 26 points is a ton of points, and I just don't think Ole Miss. If they didn't lose to Florida, I would be more open to picking them here in a blowout, but I just don't see it happening. They are home; they have that going for them. But you got Mississippi State 2-9. What a couple weeks it'd be for Mississippi State if you could go off of Ole Miss losing to Florida, collapsing their season, and just trying to keep this one close with Ole Miss. So it should be good. I don't think Ole Miss, though, will be able to get over 26 points. Just too many in the Egg Bowl for me.
Yeah, I think that's a sneaky good pick, Case. I was very close to making my card, but I think that one is a good one. You got to ask, well, where's Ole Miss's head at? Like, they just lost that game after being talked about maybe being a national championship by some people, including myself. And so it's like, now you go from that, now your season's kind of over, and there's a 1% chance you could probably make the playoff now unless some absolute chaos happens and you look good. But it's like you got no SC championship now to look forward to, no playoff. I just think the state of that program is not going to be really excited to play this game on Friday night, as you said.
Yeah.
For my next pick, I'm going to go to a game. I think it's also on Friday. Little East Carolina Pirates at home, given 2.5 against Navy. We are fading the Naval Academy again. I just think, again, this injury for this quarterback is really affecting them. They didn't look good since that Notre Dame game. I think they lost 3 out of 4 outright. Now you get to come to East Carolina, who's actually playing some good ball. If you look at them, they cashed their win total over with some people that had it that I know. They've been looking a lot better. They were a little bad early in the season. I think they fired their coach, got a new coach. They're 4-0 since they've had this new coach under center here. Offense is clicking, putting up a lot of points. Don't mind the over in this one, too, as a little bonus play. But I think ECU, this game opened up +1, now swinging over to -2.5, so it's definitely on the move. But I think this one's a little underrated. ECU Pirates playing some good football, going to be in Carolina there Friday night. I think they get the big win by a lot of points against Navy here.
Paisley, when did you become anti-American?
It just happened with the spots, but I love this country, love the troops for sure.
I love it. All right, East Carolina -2.5, also Friday. I'm going Ohio State, laying all the points. I think I have it at 20.5 right now against Michigan. We don't need to reiterate ourselves here, but I like Ohio State big over Michigan for those points we made earlier. So look at the timestamp, go back to the Ohio State Michigan game. Give me the Buckeyes by a lot.
I like it. Yeah, there should be a great spot for Ohio State. If they cannot blow them out this year with Michigan being that bad, Ohio State really has some problems.
And if Michigan, I will be rooting for, well, no, see, I'm in a tough spot because Michigan wins this game somehow. Ryan Day's out of there. It'd be the funniest thing ever. And I said a couple of weeks ago that Ryan Day won't be the head coach of Ohio State next year. So I need somehow that to happen. This would be the way for it to happen. However, I don't want to go play Oregon in the Big Ten championship and then lose and then be out of the playoffs. So I don't know what I'm doing here. It's kind of a tough spot. But let's just give Ohio State by a lot. Ohio State's going to win, by 40. So anyway,
a lot of emotions there in this one. I like it. Big Ten matchup. If he doesn't cover the spread, I would fire him. Honestly, that'd be if I was Ohio State. But
I'd be fine with me. Squeak it out. Well, no, Ohio State's winning by a lot. Forget it.
And again, to keep up with the theme here, we are going to be fading Army going into this week. I forgot about that.
Anti-American, Paisley. Come on.
Again, I mean, this is crazy, but again, you look at the spot and the number. I mean, I'll take UTSA playing some good ball as well out of the American. If you take a look at their past couple games, putting up a lot of points, defense is rounded in the form. They are getting 7 going to Army. Little travel here from Texas to New York, but I think this is too many points. I think this should be lower to like 3 or 4. I think UTSA can maybe flirt with an outright victory here. And another point is, if you look at the rush totals for the quarterback from Army, I think he rushed it 38 or 39 times against Notre Dame. And we were there in person. He was getting popped on some of those. Like, Notre Dame is a very physical team. They were hitting him really hard. And they had him in that they were down 42, I think it was, and he scored that touchdown late with like 30 seconds left. He ran every play in that last drive, and they're down 42. So I don't know what Army was doing there. Like, just put the backup in at that point. I mean, the guy was getting killed all game, and then you had him in for another 7 or 8 runs on that last drive. So I just think he's going to be really beat up. He's the heart and soul of their offense. I think they're just like really going to be beat up all around. So I think UTSA keep this one close, and I wouldn't be shocked if they get the outright win. Army's already in the conference championship game, so they don't need to get this win here. They have the Navy game, which is always a big game, as we know. in 2 weeks coming up. So maybe they're prepping for that one. Looking forward to this one. So I think it's just a weird spot here. And I think UTSA still has a lot to play for with how bad their season went early on. I think they're a pretty solid team. So look out, UTSA maybe getting the outright win, but I'll take them +7 here.
Wow, possible outright win for them. Yeah, watching that Army Notre Dame game the other day, I felt like maybe some of those Notre Dame guys should be in the U.S. Army because it was just brutal. The Army was taking a couple big shots. Yeah, you're right about that. That'll be a sneaky one to watch for. You're right, and it's kind of where's Army at right now after you're riding the high of all season and to go in and just get popped in New York by Notre Dame. So we'll see. That is going to set up, though. We are going to be blessed with a great Army Navy game this season. That'll be a good one. Usually, you have one of those teams lopsided or one of those teams blowout, or they're like 2-10. Not this year. Two very talented rosters. So be fun to watch. UTSA +7 for Mr. Paisley. I'm just closing mine out for now with 3. I'm going Purdue, which is crazy to me because they are not a good team, but I feel like this is a sneaky spot for Indiana. You're coming off of a big game against Ohio State. I think you're going to be a little bit hungover. It's just a ton of points. I mean, Indiana has done this. I'm not going to be absolutely stunned if they blow the brakes off of Purdue, but I like the points. I just think it's too many. Similar to with Mississippi State, with Ole Miss getting that many. I just think 29.5 is going to be a little much for Indiana to cover. This is like, who really is Indiana? Are they going to be able to? I've seen time and time again where like a team like Penn State should win these games by a lot, and they don't. They win them by 10-20 or 10-14 or 21-28 even. I mean, that's a lot of points in the Big Ten against anybody, and I just how it sets up in Indiana. I just think Purdue could at least keep this within 4 touchdowns. Maybe I'm wrong, but give me Purdue with 29.5.
I actually disagree with you a lot on this one, but you did have a 8-2 or 9-3 week, whatever you went last week. So your system seems to be working, but I think Indiana bounces back. We'll probably be going head to head on the cards with this one.
Wow.
A big win here, but who'd have thought Indiana Purdue, big game for the PB betting. My last pick, I'm going to go Fresno State +8 right now. It was +10 when it opened up. That I got it on Sunday, coming down a lot, playing against UCLA. I just think UCLA should not be laying this many points. I mean, this is not a team that could really be scoring a lot and winning by margin here. Kind of similar to UTSA and ECU. I think Fresno State's playing pretty good and not really getting a lot of recognition. If you look at some of their past wins, beat Colorado State, who might be playing in the Mountain West Championship last week or 2 weeks ago. But I think this Fresno State team, again, didn't play that great at the beginning of the year, had some expectations. Now they're starting to come into form a little bit down the stretch here. I think they're around bowl eligibility, or they might have that 6th win, looking to get some momentum. They take their bowl game serious. That's where I'm kind of looking at some of these smaller schools they're kind of around the 6 win mark, or they're kind of looking to pick up a little momentum because their bowl games are their Super Bowls. They don't really have a lot of other aspirations. So I think this UCLA team just lost to USC in a poor fashion. They're not. I don't think they're going bowling. This team's probably looking at next year at this point, looking transfer portal, looking maybe making some coaching changes, maybe not head coach, but some assistants and stuff. So again, I think this is just a spot play. I think this is a great spot for Fresno State, a little more motivation. I think UCLA just kind of wants the season to be over, and they got beaten up a lot with their schedule. I think we reviewed it last week with all the top tier teams they had to play. So I just think this is a lot of points. And again, could flirt with a little outright upset if you want to sprinkle some money line with Fresno State. I was very close to putting UTSA or Fresno State in my money line parlay that we'll get to in a second here, but I think both these teams could win outright, could flirt with a little money line here.
I love it, calling for some potential upsets this week, Mr. Paisley, with anti-American schools and Fresno State to get the win over UCLA. Yeah, I didn't realize actually that game was even on the card. UCLA and Fresno, a little weird there late in the season, I guess. Little non-con game because of Notre Dame and USC having to play on a conference there. But all right, Fresno State +8. That sets up for the PB parlay of the week. I think we've gone 1-1 almost every single week. Either Jared misses, or when Jared hits, I miss it on my week, which is how that happened about probably half the time. So will this finally be the week, Mr. Paisley? Who is your outright underdog to get the win?
Yeah, I mean, we're knocking at the door, Case. We gotta bust it down one of these times. But My pick, I'm going to go with Texas A&M. We talked about them earlier, playing Texas at home here, big spot for Texas A&M. Coming off that loss, I think kind of helps them now. They kind of get a little pissed off, a little more focused here on this game, and now they really need this game if they want any shot of being in the playoff. And like you said, they win this game, they're in the SEC championship against Georgia. I think that's how it should play out. So a lot of motivation here for Texas A&M in the SEC. They got Marcel Reed back at quarterback, who had a good game against Auburn, had good stats, but just couldn't get the win. Again, like we said, kind of fluky with the 2-point conversions back to back. So, liking Texas A&M. We did a full breakdown earlier, but I think Texas A&M covers and gets the outright upset here. Big win to end the regular season at night, causing more chaos for the people who decide on who gets in and who doesn't. So give me Texas A&M plus 170.
That one, will be fun, and that will be chaotic if that happens, which is a big possibility there. A&M at plus 170. I'm going a similar route, I guess. I'm going another playoff bubble team here. South Carolina to outright defeat Clemson. I know they have to go on the road, but I just think they're better. The spread's only 2.5. I mean, I saw a world where South Carolina could be the favorite here in this one. South Carolina coming off of a ton of big wins with a pretty tough schedule. They have that huge win over A&M about a month ago, at home, blew them out. They crushed Vanderbilt. We've seen what Vanderbilt could do at times. They took care of business against Missouri. So all around, South Carolina's been a decent team all season. They lost a close one against LSU early in the season. I mean, they win that. They might be safely in the playoff right now. And I do think this practically is a playoff game between this South Carolina and Clemson. I find it hard to believe that the loser of this gets left out. Maybe more so South Carolina here, just because they're a little bit farther back and they need some help. But yeah, give me South Carolina, get the outright win and have a great end of the regular season and a rivalry matchup, and potentially will be going to the playoff.
Yeah, I love that one, Case. That's a great pick. Gamecocks all the way. Let's hopefully this one gets home with a total parlay odds of plus 477. So nice little juice here on that one, plus 477. Let's get it home this week.
All right, plus 477. You heard it there. Hopefully we need this win to get back on schedule here. I guess, Mr. Paisley, maybe we'll release our picks on Friday this week. Friday morning, I'm thinking maybe, just because we got that full slate. So if you're listening, tune in Friday morning to the page for our picks. They'll all be there. We'll have all the Saturday games listed, so we'll do it a day earlier this week. And if you're looking Saturday, just look for yesterday's pick on Friday. They'll all be there. We appreciate all of our sponsors. Uncle Lou, a great guy there down in Georgia. So thank you to all those listeners. And we will see you next week, breaking down the final week of the regular season.